Good evening and welcome to Forecast Lab. The year was 2025 when Mother Nature decided to paint the Deep South white. From Houston to New Orleans into the Florida Panhandle, something happened that many folks said would never happen. Blizzard warnings, single-digit temperatures, and a foot of snow. In Texas, where everything is supposed to be bigger, the first recorded blizzard warning outside of West Texas, and the first recorded blizzard warning for Louisiana as well. Beaumont saw 5 inches of snow. In New Orleans, where they usually worry more about hurricanes than snowflakes, 8 inches of snow fell. The last time that happened, 1895, when Grover Cleveland was president. In Little Milton, Florida, a town that most Americans could not find on a map, nearly 10 inches of snow fell, the most in Florida's recorded history. Over 2,000 flights grounded, hundreds of cars stranded on Georgia highways. In Atlanta, emergency crews could not reach those in need because the roads were clogged with abandoned cars. Like a scene from a disaster movie, except this one was real. All right, well, let's get on to the weather picture, and there it is. You can see that snow on the visible satellite imagery. And even before sunset, quite a bit of snow on the ground through southern Alabama, southern Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. Welcome to Forecast Lab. This is a channel where I bring to you actual experience as a former Air Force meteorologist and author of Storm Chasing Handbook from the 2000s. Here we work through actual weather charts like I would have used at the forecast desk. So the graphics here are going to look much different from the other channels. That's because we focus on those tools that I would have used as an actual forecaster back in the day. Well, we've got another clipper working in from Canada. Temperatures going down once again in Minnesota and the Dakotas. A warm-up in the central U.S. as downslope flow picks up, 30s and 40s on the Great Plains, even 50s in southwestern Oklahoma. This region was down below minus 10 just a couple of days ago. Ridging from the previous outbreak on its way out from the southeastern U.S. to the Gulf Coast. You can see those temperatures down in the 30s, and it will be another very cold night tonight. The snow on its way out. And on the West Coast, lots of high pressure, another plateau high starting to develop, 1036 millibars around Winnemucca. The differential between the Great Basin area and Los Angeles is helping to get those Santa Ana winds going yet again. The Federal Observation Network shows a few 30 to 40 knot gusts in the higher elevations. The valley floors are looking pretty good, though. So what everybody probably wants to know is there more Arctic air on the way? Well, we can put that question to bed right now with the GFS forecast, temperatures up there in Canada and the Arctic. How many channels show you this kind of detail? I mean, this is great stuff. This aqua, that's going to be down around minus 20 Fahrenheit. When you see the oranges, that's getting into serious Arctic air. We don't see any on this particular chart. In fact, we've got downslope flow to the lee side of the Rockies. So going into the remainder of this week, not much going on, but we do get that surge of Arctic air from the polar regions, minus 30, minus 40, starting to show up around Resolute, Cambridge Bay, and Joe Haven. And that continues filtering down, a pretty good fetch of northerly flow, leading straight down to, of course, Minnesota and North Dakota. So we go into Saturday and Sunday. Turns out a lot of this air is actually going into Quebec and Ontario. So the flow a little bit too zonal. This is what we get with a high positive AO, or Arctic Oscillation Index. That's the annular mode. That's a measure of how much momentum there is from west to east, and that is pushing that Arctic air to the east. It's pretty much getting caught up in that strong westerly flow. So that continues. You can see the downslope flow there in the Canadian Rockies for Sunday. Then we go into next week. Well, here comes a surge of polar air coming south. That'll probably be a factor for the northeastern U.S. and the Great Lakes. Yeah, certainly by Tuesday it's coming kind of touching that area. Not much of a push. You can see that is driven by a 10, 15 millibar high and low pressure up to the north. So that's not going to bring that air south. So we go into the remainder of next week. Some polar air recharging up to the north. Kind of a battlefield right there. A castle wall of sorts. And behind the castle wall, 10, 30 millibars on that high. That's not really enough to drive that air south. So we do get a little bit of reinforcement there, 10, 40 millibars, but that is not a good push of polar air. And in fact, that you can see that affects mostly the northeastern U.S. However, on the extended, now we're starting to see a little bit more of what we saw with the 2021 cold wave with Uri. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but we saw a similar situation. Lots of orange up to the north. In fact, it was a little bit wider than that, kind of covering an area like this. So this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. This is not a reflection of a severe cold wave coming up for February, but it does need to be watched. And the upper air dynamics looking like this, troughing through the western Great Lakes, supporting that frontal system there, and another trough carved out across the Four Corners into New Mexico. This is indicative of a jet max in New Mexico, and that elongates north into Utah and Idaho, and eastward into the Red River Valley of Texas and into Arkansas. So we are going to be looking for a little upper lift to come out ahead of that trough. And on the west coast, a continuation of this cutoff high off of Oregon. This is a Rex block. We've got a cutoff low south of Los Angeles, cutoff high up to the north, and that is a blocking pattern. In the northeastern region, under the influence of that low-level ridge, advisories, watches, and warnings finally disappearing. Highs rising into the teens, with 20s in the coastal regions and in Virginia. Still holding on to a cold weather advisory in West Virginia in the Shenandoah Mountains and into adjoining parts of Virginia, such as around Staunton. Temperatures could drop down to minus 10 tonight. And in the Great Lakes area, we had a rapid warm-up. Highs came up into the teens and 20s, with 30s approaching from the Corn Belt region. In Michigan, lake effect snows continue. Winter storm warning for today, tonight, and tomorrow from western Michigan around Muskegon up to Traverse City, 4 to 9 inches of snow, 35-mile-an-hour winds. And in the eastern Michigan UP, right around here, I-75 into Mackinac County, winter storm warning through tonight for up to 2 inches of additional snow. Winter weather advisory on the South Shore into Petoskey County, 2 to 5 inches in that part of Michigan. In the southeast, very cold this afternoon, as we mentioned, highs in the 30s all the way into northern Florida, 20s across North Carolina. Winter weather advisory was posted late this afternoon. That appears to be dying off. That's around Newport down to the Outer Banks. Rapid clearing. They were expecting up to 1 inch. What we're dealing with right now is the cold, extreme cold warning in the Florida Panhandle, adjoining parts of Alabama, southeast Mississippi, where people are not accustomed to that deep cold. Houses are not insulated very well at all. We could see wind chills there in the single digits tonight. In fact, let me show you the low temperatures. Yeah, these are going to be the minimum temperatures tonight across the Deep South. This is the official National Weather Service forecast, down to 9, 10, 11 degrees from about, I think that's going to be just east of Grove Hill over to Dothan. Mobile expecting 11 tonight. That's due to that snow cover. It forms a insulating blanket, and you get that very intense radiational cooling on top of that. We will see probably a return to 10-degree lows around Lafayette. It was brutal there last night. Let me show you that. Yeah, look at these METAR plots in Louisiana about 4 in the morning. These are temperatures in Fahrenheit, not Celsius. We were down to 4 degrees at Opelousas, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, 7 degrees at Lafayette, 9 degrees at Baton Rouge. That is some deep, deep cold. 9 degrees at Lake Charles, and 13 at Beaumont. I'm not sure if those are going to be actual lows. Let me show you the lows from the Cooperative Observer Network. There it is. Apparently one station southeast of Lafayette got down to -1. That station with -1 located right here northeast of Romero. In fact, there's the site. I don't know if that's going to be valid or representative of the area. It could be in a bowl. That does tend to happen a lot during these extreme cold episodes. Of course, we saw 4 at that one station right here, and single digits all the way up there into East Texas. 9 degrees north of Jacksonville. 1 degree around Jackson. And once again for tonight, another cold advisory all the way from Beaumont over to New Orleans, Montgomery, and Charleston under that cold advisory. Temperatures down to 10 degrees. In the southern plains, a dramatic warm-up. Highs in the 40s in East Texas and 50s elsewhere. Coming up close to 60 in the lower Pecos River. It was 50 degrees today in San Antonio, where they had half an inch of snow yesterday. And much warmer in the northern plains, just about everywhere, except with that new round of cold advection in Minnesota and North Dakota. We do pick up some problems in the high plains. Wind advisory around Rapid City, Sturgis up to northwestern South Dakota, expiring shortly for northwest winds gusting to 55 miles an hour. Winter weather advisories in northeastern Wyoming, southeastern Montana overnight. Snow and blowing snow with up to 2 inches of accumulation. Blizzard warning around Lewiston to Lewis and Clark National Forest. And I'm not going to go into each one of these advisories, but there it is. Winter weather advisory, southwestern Montana. Winter storm warning, southeast of Billings. And there's the blizzard warning out there around Lewistown. In the southwestern region, fair skies once again. Wildfires breaking out. One southwest of Flagstaff. That's going to be the Crater Sinks wildfire. And another big one raging to the north of Santa Clarita. That's going to be, I think, looking for that. There it is, right there. A little bit obscured by cirrus, but we can take a closer look. We're looking at the wildfire thermal product, and that's it right there. Looks like a lit cigarette. That's about the same size as the Palisades fire we had last week. This touched off at about 1830 Z. It was up to 3,400 acres a couple of hours ago. Fortunately, it's in a very uninhabited area. The name of that wildfire is the Castaic Lake Fire. I don't really expect that to come near any large populated areas. The city starts probably a good 15 miles to the south. I think that would only happen if it got seriously out of control. Fortunately, the winds are really not that strong. And for those in California, here's the burn area. That's going to be on the northeast shore of Castaic Lake, the Interstate 5 corridor right here. So it is quite a ways from that, and the lake forming a natural fire break. And let's move things along. Highs in the 40s in the Pacific Northwest, 30s in the interior. Most of the bad weather is on the east side of the Continental Divide. That's where we pick up those advisories and warnings. Air stagnation advisories continue in south central Oregon and the southwest valleys. I'm not really going to give an expiry time on that, as they've been renewed almost daily for a week, and that area continues to be under that cutoff high. And we head out into the Pacific and up to Alaska. We have a lobe of this 1040 millibar high extending into the Pacific. Most of the storm systems well to the west. The closest deep one is in the Bering Sea, producing wintry weather from the Bering Sea into western Alaska. We have winter storm warnings for Nome. They're expecting 1 to 3 inches of snow through tonight, combined with blowing snow. Other winter storm warnings in Ambler. The Dalton Highway, which connects Fairbanks to the oil fields at Prudhoe Bay, they are under a winter storm watch Thursday night through Friday between the Yukon River and Adigan Pass in the Brooks Range. 8 to 15 inches expected. So we're talking about this area right in here. Then going down into Canada, a couple of snowfall warnings, one for Stewart. They're looking for, 14 to 18 inches there. 4 inches possible east of Prince George near McGregor. We pick up snowfall warnings in southern Alberta, southeast of Medicine Hat, another 4 to 8 inches possible there. Then we pick up extreme cold warnings through central Ontario from Port Albany, or is that Fort Albany? I think that's Fort, down to Lake Superior, affecting part of the Transcan. Wind chills could be down to minus 40 there. In Ontario, snow squall warnings on the east side of Lake Superior and Georgian Bay. And going into Quebec underneath this ridge, we actually have smog warnings. One for the entire Quebec City area, the other about 50 miles northwest of Montreal. All right, let's take a look at that forecast, starting out with the current map. Lake effect snows continue across the Great Lakes. Those are going to be winding down by tomorrow night and mostly confined to the western Michigan shores. So for midday tomorrow, this is how it looks. Northerly flow returning to Texas as that next anticyclone works southward. Massive cool down once again for Minnesota, eastern North Dakota, down to the single digits for highs from Fargo to Duluth. 10 degrees at Minneapolis for tomorrow afternoon. Lake effect snows pick up in the eastern Great Lakes, Lake Erie and the Lake Ontario snowbelt. They get going late Thursday into early Friday. Then for Friday, another blast of cold air sweeps into the high plains, reinforcing the cold temperatures that will bring some snow with it. You can see it working there into Wyoming, and that'll make its way into Colorado for Saturday morning. So this next shot of cold air will hold the temperatures down across much of the northern U.S. We are looking for highs in the northeastern U.S. in the 20s, in the interior with 30s on the coast. Extensive snow begins developing in the Wasatch Range further west as this next western U.S. system begins developing. And this area of snow will advance into the Four Corners area. Albuquerque, they see this as more of a mixed phase precipitation event. The other forecast offices going for mostly snow and possibly rain down there in Southern California where they desperately need it. So be looking for that maybe in about 4 to 5 days. Anyway, we begin developing this southern storm track for early next week, so precipitation chances will be increasing in that part of the country and diminishing up north. So already by Wednesday, a pretty stout fetch of warm air advection developing in Texas could see showers and storms developing there near this warm front. That will slowly advance to the west into the lower Mississippi River Valley by Friday, and plenty of precip there and maybe a chance for snow in parts of Oklahoma and southwestern Missouri. And that's going to be the last frame that I have, so it's good to see a little bit of precip down in the southern part of the country. And that will be all for this edition of Forecast Lab. Thanks to our newest Patreon supporters, Gary Penn and Evan Schaefer. Your contributions are very much appreciated. That kind of support is what I really like to see. That helps keep the program going and shows that our most important viewers are invested in this content. So thank you very much. Okay, we'll see everybody back here again for another edition on Friday. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.